the Morph mod was one of many mods created by iChun, name which you'll hear a few more times on this archive. The Morph mod allowed players to obtain morphs of pretty much every mob by simply killing them for the first time, although you could also obtain morphs for different colors of sheep, for example. Using the brackets on your keyboard, you could summon this smooth drop-down menu that listed all of the mobs you have acquired, and just select them with the enter key. These morphs aren't just cosmetical, as you usually also receive both the advantages and disadvantages of each mob. The chicken, for instance, has its regular slow fall, whereas something like the zombie will just start burning under the sun. I would love to show every transformation, but I think you get the point. Aside from the fact they are also technically unlimited, as Morph also supports every mod procedurally. A detail I especially like about this original Morph mod is that the vanilla mobs almost always have their proper arms. It's such a useless detail, but I really appreciate this mod for having it, as plenty of newer mods often just don't really bother with it. This mod was very polished, and was pretty much everywhere at the time. YouTubers loved using it in things like prop hunt videos, aside from the obvious mod reviews, although like many other mods from the time, it often wasn't compatible with things like Optifine, which was also a big bummer. The original Morph mod was updated thoroughly up to Minecraft 1.16.5, and where it stopped receiving updates entirely, although there are now many and so many new mods just trying to recapture the whole Morph idea. It's not really much of a survival mod either, it instead leans into a more whimsical and fun stylized mod from the time. It's useful for multiplayer in very limited scenarios, but in single player it just tends to feel limited, at best, unless you're a kid eager to play as a pig or a sheep or something like that. The John mod was one of the first horror-related mods for Minecraft, originated all the way back in beta and being named through a Reddit comment. I did not make that up, it's there. While I also found the version for beta, I'd rather just show the one for 1.6.4, which was the version that actually got popular with YouTube. The mod itself was pretty simple. Sometimes at night, 3 new hostile mobs could spawn. Regular John, who did this atrocious sound and who could also spawn during the day. Baby John, a more common small version of John which spawned in packs and chased you. And at last, Mega John, which was the rarest and literally just a giant version of John with a shitty upscale texture. This mod, even for being a remake of a beta one, is bare bones at best, and trying to play survival with it would be nothing but a nightmare, as these horrendously loud sounds start playing pretty far from them, also making it pretty obvious when one of them spawned. Not that you're going to miss them, because I'm pretty sure they also spawn more often than they should, at least in the jar I was able to find. There's also a seemingly out of place immortality gem that John and Mega John can drop. It's used to craft an immortal blade, which is literally just a diamond sword that supposedly deals a bit more damage to John. According to various places that could be wrong, there was an official 1.7.10 version of this mod, but I was never able to find it. The latest version I was able to find was the one for 1.6.4 I mentioned, and even then I was only able to find it through a sketchy Mediafire link I found on Reddit. So yeah, these mods are not very easy to come by sometimes. Armorer's Workshop was an easy mod to create fully custom blocks, items and armor by building it yourself on the world. Let me explain. So the main attractions were both the Armourer block and the color mixer. With them you could set up a floating body part of your own skin, in which you could freely build accessories with equipment cubes, place RGB colors in with the color mixer I mentioned. As you can see, it's actually pretty easy once you get the hang of it, and it's just building inside of the specified grid and just saving the whole thing inside of a template item. For example, I made these nerd glasses and this badass chain, which as you can see you can equip with this extra accessories menu, which is a different keybind entirely. The mod also includes a selection of examples within the equipment library block, which you could spawn with the template items I mentioned. There are also multiple different brushes to paint the equipment cubes, and a mannequin block, which you can use to freely pose and display accessories with. To my surprise, because I actually didn't know this, Armourer's workshop is actually still receiving updates, and it's currently stuck in Minecraft 1.21.1, but it also now has official fabric and Neoforge boards. Although, mind you, the gameplay you've seen is from 1.7.10, so it's not quite the same mod. Borner with 2 N's as Herobrine Mod was far from the first Herobrine Mod, but it probably was the most widespread one. While the Herobrine totem, often shown in fake sighting videos and such, looked something like this mod ditches that and simply adds a different vertical pillar with a middle custom block called the Herobrine totem. Nothing will seemingly be different, at least on a first glance. It's then when you least expect it that the game just does something like this. I'm sorry if I startled you, despite the warning, but that one legit did catch me off guard. As you were able to see, not only does Herobrine spawn, but there are also more possessed mobs by Herobrine that sometimes spawn with him. The mod doesn't just add Herobrine in the same event you just saw. In fact, there are a lot of Herobrines. 8 Herobrines, and I'll just rapidly go through them. 3 of them are simply called Herobrine, and these spawn eggs. 1 is a broken ghast reskin that doesn't get used as far as I know. The blue one seems to just be the regular stalker that chases you, which is kind of the cooler one. And the green and brown spawn eggs just basically triggers one of those random Herobrine events that happen, which might as well just be spawning another of the other Herobrines. Then there is also the Herobrine builder, which spawns naturally all throughout the world and often makes structures when despawning, such as traps intended to trap the player. The Herobrine Stalker one, which simply just has very minor effects and sometimes drops your entire inventory. And the Wither reskin, which as far as I know is also locked behind creative. There are also all of the Herobrine infected animals, but we don't really care about those. This mod was weird. This is something that we will encounter with a lot of more mods. It has, for example, inside jokes. There is Chuck Norris, obviously a very important character to Herobrine's lore. And, well, that was definitely not Chuck Norris, although I swear it did work at one point, but in the version I currently have it just does that, so I have no idea. There's also a Notch mob that I think sometimes chases Herobrine, I think. And weirdest of all, this guy, Jetra from PMC, which is some totally weird inside joke I genuinely just can't find the context for. PMC I thought might stand for Planet Minecraft or who knows what. He also says some very depressing things. Sorry, Jetra from PMC. The Aether was one of the most finalized Minecraft mods to ever come out, especially at the time it did, releasing all the way back in 2011 and being updated all the way up to current versions, in which, by the way, there has been a weird split between the first Aether mod and the second newer one. The mod was released when Minecraft had relatively little content. The Aether felt almost like an official update. It wasn't just another dimension mod, it was one of the first mods that actually felt like Mojang could have made it themselves, and it ended up setting the bar ridiculously high for adventure mods that came after it. The Aether adds a similar portal to the Nether's, one which you've probably seen already. And well, this mod adds a lot of stuff, so I am definitely not going to be able to show it all. So first things first, obviously you can tell the entire dimension is made up of new blocks. Not even your old torches are useful here. Obviously every biome is completely new. Every structure is too. There are new monsters, animals and materials that only exist within the Aether. The mod also has a system of accessories obtainable through crafting or dungeon loot, which you can equip in these new inventory slots. The mod also has a fully original soundtrack, which I absolutely adore, and which I have actually used in some of my other videos. Dungeons with multiple bosses, each one unlocking progressively harder content and better loot, and generally just a different world. When this mod came out, Minecraft didn't even have the end, so this really was in fact a breath of fresh air. Brando PRs, the original creator of the Aether mod, eventually joined Mojang in January of 2020, even moving to Sweden for the job, so props to him. Remember Aichun, the guy mentioned in the first entry, the creator of the Morph mod? Well, he was really obsessed with Minecraft pigs, so much so that in fact he made It Fell from the Sky, or also known as simply Pixzilla, from Godzilla. Yeah, that's pretty much what it's supposed to do. Although it should have a much more refined and dramatic animation in which it falls like a meteorite, gets lodged somewhere in the ground, and then just grows up and all of that. You can also ride them, just like regular pigs, but you are actually just sitting on the snout. That's literally it. It really doesn't have much of a purpose. This is not a mod with a lot of functionality at all. It's more of a joke mod or a proof of concept, which at most maybe you can use to terrorize a village, but it is still a great quirky outlier from the time. Pixelmon was a pioneering Minecraft mod which tried to transform Minecraft into what basically is an open world Pokemon game. It started very rough as nothing but a crappy mod adding entities of the Kanto starters, and eventually added almost every major gimmick from the Pokemon franchise. You could catch, train, and breed Pokemon, with plenty of stuff carried over from the games like how Leprechaun's worked in Pokemon Gold and Silver. It was also first to add an anvil block, before the official Minecraft one, which you could use along with a hammer to polish the apricorns and form Pokeball lids, feature which would get removed in newer versions. Visually, I definitely know it looked much better in 2015. The version I chose for this video is purposefully 3.5.1, which came out in 2015 and was pretty much the most popular one. This version is from the period of time specifically in which the developers of the mod started discarding these first choppy, ugly, blocky models for the Pokemon, in favor of custom-made 3D ones. But because of that, there are better and worse models. The mod also added a few structures, most notably the awfully common Pokemon centers, and something like the legendary birds' shrines, which were pretty rare and which gave you a sort of side quest. The rest of legendaries actually spawn naturally, under very rare and specific biomes and circumstances. The mod, similarly to the Aether, also features a fully fledged soundtrack composed by Chris Geddes, which actually newer incarnations of the mod have scrapped in favor of leaving them in a separate texture pack. But seriously, these songs are really good, and they give Pixelmon much more of a whimsy and fantastic feeling. This is something that is often really forgotten, but Pixelmon also had a custom launcher. I can tell you it lasted roughly from 2015 to when the mod actually shut down, and it was just another Minecraft launcher that looked like this and featured options to ease out creating or using mod packs with Pixelmon. Suffice to say, Pixelmon really was one of the most packed Minecraft mods of all time. But that doesn't justify a lot of things that happened. I am not going to get into drama in this video. I will try to avoid that and keep this as an objective archive with a few of my opinions mixed in. But the developers of the original Pixelmon were already mixed within certain drama because of code that could be considered malicious, and mostly just gave developers not the best reputation in the world. But the issues actually stemmed when Nintendo in July of 2017 threatened them with a cease and desist, which evidently the developers had to comply with. And that is basically as far as the original Pixelmon goes, although it will definitely come back, as this is not the last time we will see a Pixelmon related entry in this video. Chisel is a seemingly simple yet actually overwhelming mod which adds, well, a chisel. With the chisel item, regardless of the material, you can right click or shift right click to swap between literally hundreds of block variations. There is also a much more precise UI to do it in case you're looking for massive quantities of a block, but all of that's simple enough. Here I made a showcase world putting a ton of blocks together that the mod adds, mostly in order to see how many of them I could really show, but in newer versions there are even more of them. So just enjoy this quick showcase. I'd love to say something else, but there really isn't much more to talk about. And sometimes these mods are really just like that. This was a great mod that added hundreds of variations for vanilla, sometimes modded, or new blocks, all being beautifully drawn, and most of the time extremely consistent with how Minecraft looked at the time. The Twilight Forest is another one of Minecraft's oldest yet still maintained Minecraft mods, dating all the way back to August of 2011. The Twilight Forest adds, well, the Twilight Forest dimension, which you can enter by making a square of flowers around a 2x2 water pond and throwing a diamond. There is a lot going on in this dimension. Evidently all of the biomes are brand new, just like the Aether, and there are different mobs and variations of the overworld ones. But there are also major bosses that reside in their own structure. The first boss, for example, is Naga. It's this ugly looking snake creature, and defeating it allows access to the Lick Tower, home of the Twilight Lick. The dimension follows a progression style which locks the structures with a sort of invisible, well, it's not really invisible, but it's a transparent particle barrier until you have defeated the correct boss. It's not too confusing in the game, as it also makes it really clear when you just can't access something. The Twilight Forest was definitely on par in terms of quality with something like the Aether, although it does lean more into a sort of adventure or Nordic feeling, whereas the Aether is more mystical. If I have a complaint about this mod, is that it's often troublesome with many optimization mods or things like that, which simply refuse to launch with it. Even Replay Mod gave me a few unexpected crashes, otherwise it's a very stable mod. But it's better if you just really think about the mods you're using with it. If you haven't given it a shot, I entice you to do so, as it's never too late, and at the time of recording, the mod is fully ported to at the very least Minecraft 1.21.1, now with much better compatibility than the original Forge version I used for this video. With this, before jumping to the next entry, we will encounter the first of many mods I'll cover with dubious quality. This isn't an archive of the best Minecraft mods, nor is it really a ranking. It's simply a collection of whatever was popular at the time, whether that meant millions of YouTube views or millions of downloads, which were sometimes just not the same. I also tried to order the entries so a weirder mod is usually followed by a more recognizable one, to try and enhance the pacing of this video. Thanks! The Yell mod was a simple mod that added two things: a keybind and a single block. The keybind, as the mod implies, allows you to yell, bizarrely putting faces on the block as you are doing it. So just loud sounds, warning, maybe even kind of a jump scare.
I'm a fire in my labor!
The mod's entire purpose is basically what just happened, which is when you really spam the key. And when I say really, I say I have no idea how mod reviewers actually got past this, because it was extremely hard. Like, I could not get this the first, the second, or the fifth or 10th time. The world is literally over. As far as I know, there are no ways to legally restore the world. It's over and there is nothing to do. Although in reality you're just in another dimension and you could cheat it, but that kind of ruins the whole purpose, doesn't it? While doing research on this mod, I also discovered that this classic meme face that appears in this video is actually called Shoop the Whoop. I had no idea, okay, maybe I'm the weird one. And that it actually is an edited version of this Dragon Ball scene, so the more you know, I guess. Orespawn was a 2013 mod created by Richard Clark, also known as They Call Me Danger. I'll be straightforward about this. Orespawn is very weird. It's not necessarily a criticism, but you will definitely understand me if you just open a world with Orespawn. Orespawn adds so many monsters, animals, nonsensical creatures, structures, dimensions, weapons. One of the first things that you'll notice is the generous amount of structures, to say the least, as there is pretty much a different or sometimes the same structure every 60 blocks or so. And when I tell you Orespawn is weird, I mean that there are rare nests of rainbow ants that are the only way that you can actually access the village dimension by right-clicking the ants. And in this village dimension, we can find the even weirder mobs, including the girlfriends. There are a lot of weirder dimensions like the crystal dimension, which is nothing but a Minecraft lobotomy. Everything is transparent and there is an infinite maze at the bedrock layer. Not only that, but structures and especially mobs get progressively weirder here. So yeah, there are weapons that deal hundreds of damage, special pickaxes, fishing rods, and just so many new armors. There is just so much crammed into this mod, whether it be sensical or not. I hope the background footage does more justice than my words, because there really isn't a lot to explain properly. It's very hard to do so. While there are already plenty of videos already documenting Orespawn and its creator's history, I'll try to summarize it without getting too much into the drama. Basically, the creator designed this mod without much of a restraint or a direction. There are giant bosses, literally over 20 dimensions in total, and the girlfriends are a tameable mob, which is questionable. I'd like to be as objective as possible, but basically the creator tried to monetize the mod at one point. He was called out because of that. He made a massive campaign of harassment, pulling download links from the mod, and many other reports that haven't been verified and I am not going to show here. Eventually just getting his whole Discord shut down, which at the end of the day just gave him a reputation as one of the most infamous mod creators in Minecraft. The original mod is also still kind of hard to come by sometimes, because you have to get it from either re-uploaders or some remake or something. Orespawn honestly remains a genuinely bizarre artifact of Minecraft's modding golden age. And I'm not going to get into the age thing, because there's people who called the era where mods were popular the Silver Age, but they also call this age the golden age of modding, so I am not going to get into that, okay? Please stop. Trail Mix is another one of iChun's wonderful mods. It only adds 3 single items. The main thing about this mod is crafting a trail mix. It's crafted by combining redstone, gunpowder, glowstone dust, and sugar. Basically all of the dusts in the game at the time. And with it you can basically drug pigs, causing them to do whatever this is. Yeah, like something about this mod just really draws me to it. There aren't many words to put this together. This is just awesome. It's an awesome mod. There is also a trail mix pig launcher, which does exactly as you might have imagined. And my favorite, the Nyan Pig launcher. I am not making that up. You can also supposedly write these pics, but it just didn't quite work for me. And I had never even heard about that, even if I did know about the mod before, so that's probably for the newer versions. Lucky Blocks is definitely like Minecraft's most global mod. And I'm not even exaggerating. I've genuinely heard people in real life called the Mario question blocks Lucky Blocks, despite never even having played Minecraft. Lucky Blocks' premise was simple. You broke one of their blocks, and something random happened. The results ranged from incredibly unlucky, completely neutral, and just ridiculously overpowered. There was no balance, there was no fairness, and definitely no way to predict what you'd get. That simplicity is honestly what made the mod explode. Anybody could basically understand the entire concept in 5 seconds, and YouTube loved that. So much so that Lucky Blocks pretty much defined an entire era of Minecraft YouTubers, because regardless of language, almost every creator eventually made at least a few Lucky Block videos, or sometimes just completely milked the idea to death. It also inspired an absurd amount of add-ins. People made Lucky Blocks based on Spider-Man, superheroes, Pokemon, horror movies, memes, YouTubers, I don't know, me. Pretty much anything you can think of eventually got turned into one. Even today in 2026, long after the original mod stopped dominating YouTube, there are still videos coming out, along with modern recreations and spiritual successors and all whatnot. While Lucky Blocks may have been a simple concept, and in survival it mostly just had an occasional structure with one single Lucky Block in it, it was honestly one of the most influential ideas to ever come out of Minecraft modding. The villager Mincer mod adds a block with the same name, which upon building 2 of them stacked together will sometimes attract villagers, causing this to happen. I know it's somewhat of a gruesome mod, as they drop emeralds and a new item called villager meat. For what it's worth, it's a really bizarre and gruesome mod from the time, exactly the kind of hilarious YouTube mod review type of bizarre that almost crosses a line. It also adds canned meats, which I don't really get the purpose of, canned emeralds, which I don't get the purpose of either, and my favorite thing, a really fun emerald rifle which literally just... The support for this mod allegedly also extended up to 1.7, like the John mod, but I haven't encountered a single 1.7.10 version which simply just doesn't crash the game. Modern Minecraft players would somehow find a way to turn this into an emerald farm, though it would be really funny if someone made a remake of this mod just for that purpose. Mutant Creatures was the Minecraft animal or mob mod at the time, adding over 40 different creatures in total, all through many updates. It added everything from tiny insects, to crocodiles, to something like elephants. It's not trying to blend into Minecraft the same way something modern like Naturalist or Alex's Mobs does nowadays. The textures are much higher resolution, they're noisier and often clash with vanilla Minecraft style. But at the time we didn't really care about that. Not only did it add the huge amount of animals it did, but there were also fantasy creatures and monsters, many of which were added later. My favorites are probably the Ent and the big golem, which literally just built itself out of nearby blocks. I always found that so cool. If you wanted Minecraft to actually feel alive, chances are you had to have Mo Creatures installed. The last official update by DrZhark, the original creator, was for 1.12, although there are still a few ports and even recreations for newer versions. Also, although you probably know this, but this mod was first to add horses to Minecraft, and Mojang just kind of brought DrZhark over just for the horses. He helped with the horses and nothing else, because as far as we know he isn't at Mojang, he never worked there, they just wanted his horses. That's it. The Mob Fusions mod was a 1.8.9 mod that added 2 new ores and a handful of items. Most notably, the DNA extractor and the combiner. With them you could extract DNA from mob drops and combine it inside a crafting table to produce Spawn Eggs containing the fusion. Here are all of its transformations. Wait, but that's not right. This is not the mod I actually remember. This has to be wrong. Despite this mod also being fairly popular, this entry is somewhat of a double entry. There is another completely different mod sharing the same name, which was also very popular at the time, much more than this one. It was actually made by Fisk's Fillet, a well-known mod creator who currently actually works at Mojang while still making mods on the side. You may know him from Fisk's Superheroes, which is more of a recent mod. I had it confused for a while myself, since I already knew of Fisk's mod, but I didn't realize there were several unrelated ones sharing exactly the same name. Fisk's version is technically called Mystical Creatures Powerful Mob Fusions. It adds only 3 mobs, an Enderman skeleton hybrid that can teleport and spam arrows, which feels more than a little unfair to fight. Second, a cow squid you can ride, which is pretty fast, and even milk for squid stew. Third, the spider creeper, which oddly doesn't appear in any of the archived versions I was able to track down, so just take this PNG. And finally, there was also a boss called the Morbid Harvester, which was very fast and very quick to regenerate as well. Beating it is like actually the most interesting part of this mod. And if you actually kill it, you will be rewarded with one of its arms, a weapon which deals a whopping 40 damage. Overall, this mod doesn't add a huge amount of content, but what is there is noticeably more polished than the previous entry. If I didn't lie to you, because this is actually a triple entry. Alongside Fisk's Fillet's version, a second mob fusion mod was made at the exact same time, as part of a community mod battle of him and fellow modder Geggy1000. This is obviously where the confusion comes in today, especially with so many unrelated mods sharing the exact same name and somehow racking hundreds of thousands and sometimes even millions of views on YouTube over the years. The mod battle itself was a small community event, a poll to decide who made the better mod on a shared theme, Fisk or Geggy. Fisk ultimately won, but it would have been worth taking a look at what Geggy built as well. Geggy's mob fusion, as far as I go, is essentially lost. I couldn't find a single re-upload of it anywhere, and the name so generic would take an enormous amount of digging to track down further. The Sonic the Hedgehog mod is the first of quite a few video game adjacent mods we will be covering today, and honestly, it was my favorite. It mostly adds blocks meant for map making themed around the first Sonic game, with the tiles pulled from the actual zones of the game and a couple of shitty enemy mobs. There are also a pair of Sonic shoes that let you run fast, although they usually work better if you also give yourself a jump boost, because otherwise you're literally just going to hit every wall and it's literally awful. For the proper showcase of the mod, I decided to put together a small proof of concept map. I made sure to include practically everything the mod adds somewhere in the map, and you're watching basically a highlight reel of the best, weirdest or most entertaining moments I managed to catch. As you can see, it's literally just a sort of Sonic maker. It gives you the tools to make a sort of pseudo 3D Sonic 1, almost like a Mario Maker. Aside from what I was able to show in the actual showcase map, the mod also has a few regular Sonic characters which are underwhelming, to say the least. They are all literally just normal skins plastered on humans, and they don't really do anything, like any of them. Sonic and Tails have slightly different and almost off-putting models in some versions, but they don't really do anything interesting either. And by the way, I did really build all of that for pretty much nothing but fun. So here's just a really sped up process so you see I didn't just download a map or something. Elemental Creepers was a mod dating all the way back to beta Minecraft, which added a total of 22 new creeper variations. Some are very basic elements, like water, fire, or electric creepers, but quite a few of them also start being friendly or just plain weird. I actually find this mod to be pretty interesting to play with in survival, especially since you often just don't know what half of these guys do. Although there now are much cooler mods like the Creeper Overhaul, which go in a similar direction but in a much more serious way, this one still somehow stands the test of time in my eyes as a whimsical and fun weird alternative. Minecraft Comes Alive was a classic mod which completely replaced villagers with interactive and more human player models. The first thing is that upon joining a world, you'll receive a crystal ball, with which you can select which gender you're meant to be and which gender you're attracted to. You can interact with them, trade with them, and even give them gifts or open their inventories. If you, kind of tediously, gained 5 golden hearts with a villager, you'd be able to propose to them with one of the many ranks you can craft. When you're married, you can procreate and do as you please with your child. You can be a responsible father and keep them safe, or you can do as I've always done and enslave them to work in the mines. This is not a drill. You can genuinely do that in this mod. But yeah, as you can see, you can literally enslave them and they will work for you, and eventually you can just come down, get all of their items, give them a new pickaxe, and they will never get out if you don't want them to get out. Overall, it's a pretty nice mod. It's kind of useless in terms of actual practical use for survival, although you can always enslave your child, but otherwise it's just a great mod that helps with ambience and immersion. Remember what I said in the Yell mod? This is another one of those. Like I mentioned earlier, this series isn't about which mods were the most iconic or the best. Sometimes a mod simply got popular because it was weird or stupid, or it just had a popular IP or something attached to it. And that was definitely the case here. This is the MineDonalds mod. It adds some questionable PNGs, all of which are craftable, including bread slices, and that's almost literally it. It also adds a wonderfully French fry looking McDonald's biome, obviously, along with a portal you can build to enter the McDonald's dimension, because apparently that's just how every not so extremely high quality mod used to work. There are also 3 mobs: the McDonald's employees, which are just reskinned villagers, Ronald McDonald, and fat zombies. So basically just a villager and 2 zombie reskins. Great. At one point the lettuce and tomatoes had crops, but I found 2 different 1.6.4 versions, and in fact none of them have them working, so just pretend like they do. You can find trees that are supposed to drop McDonald's saplings, but they don't, and the leaves are just breakable and they drop by hand, so that's weird. I am not going to fill this video with slop mods like this, but I do want to strike a balance between what was popular and what was extremely well made, because back then those 2 things really did coexist. Mobends was a very slick and polished mod that gave players and certain mobs bendy limbs and smooth animations when running. While now the animations may look weird because of the extra bones compared to something modern like fresh animations, the landscape around the game at the time was so filled with music parodies and animations and such that had these sorts of movements, so this mod was nothing but a dream for us. When pressing G, the mod also features this cool drop-down menu, in which you could include animation packs that you could customize and a few presets. I don't think the custom animation packs really took off though, because when I was a kid I was only always able to find the default ones it came with. Some mobs are also updated. In the 1.7 version, these only being the zombie and the spider, but there are also animations for the tools, and especially the swords, which I always loved because they were only visual and didn't change the combat mechanics, before or after 1.9. The EyeMod was a mod that evolved from 1.7.10 to roughly 1.12. It added multiple components to craft yourself an iPhone. Not I like the alphabet letter, but like EYE as in organ, okay? With an iPhone, which you had to charge, you could add balance on the App Store by exchanging real diamonds and gold in order to buy applications. Although I'd never seen myself paying for a Notes app, but oh well. The mod definitely feels like it was designed with multiplayer in mind. You know, sending messages, sharing things, and messing around with friends was clearly the main appeal and objective behind this mod. There's also a broken raider for mobs, a painting app, a notepad, and most importantly, a music app, which evidently is the most appealing thing for a single player, and which straight up doesn't work in the version I was able to find, and it didn't really do anything. Galacticraft was a somewhat complex mod about reaching outer space. Galacticraft was also one of those mods people built entire mod packs around. Rather than being something you'd install alongside everything, it oftentimes just became the main goal of the playthrough. The premise is simple enough on paper, but there are a lot of in-between steps, recipes and systems like fuel and oxygen you need to take care of before even thinking of going somewhere with a rocket. In outer space, you were able to select Mars, the Moon, Venus, or asteroids, with the Moon being the first to get to. The Moon at first looks empty, except for the Squidward villagers, but beneath the surface, there are both new ores and dungeons, containing a boss. This is also pretty much the exact same case for Mars and for Venus. The asteroids are the ones that are a tad bit different, but they are also a space station infested with zombies structure, which is pretty cool, and eventually you can even build your own orbital space station to expand however you want, as you can literally just make a base there. Galacticraft really wasn't just about reaching space and that's it. It's kind of more of an increasingly difficult planet thing, in which you slowly build up your own little space program. If you are interested in trying Galacticraft today, there exists an enhanced version called Galacticraft Legacy, which mostly cleans things up and bundles together the dependencies the original mod needed, so it's a single jar download. It's available for 1.7 and 1.12. If you'd rather play new versions, there is also Ad Astra, which many people consider kind of the modern spiritual successor. Cubic Villager added this single crafting recipe for the wand of the villager blocker. If we right click a villager with it, this will happen. Now we can store villagers in our inventory and place their heads as trading blocks, without having to worry about having these useless guys around in trading halls or something. You can also cook the villager heads and turn them into vacant villager blocks, which you can also slice with an axe. That is pretty grim. And at last, if you for whatever reason want to revive the villagers you just chopped the head of, you can make a new body with emeralds, almost like if you were summoning a snow golem. And because I wasn't creative, I basically infested the village with clones of this guy. So yeah, strange mod. People in like 2013 really did have some inborn hatred towards villagers. Like seriously, this and the villager Mincer are not the only mods about stuff like this. Tinker's Construct is a mod that completely changes how tools and weapons are created in Minecraft. Instead of crafting everything in a crafting table, you first create individual parts, which are then assembled into your own custom tools. Different materials affect things like durability, mining speed, damage, and just a lot of traits. So 2 pickaxes made from different materials can end up completely different. There are also a bunch of new crafting stations, most notably the smeltery, which lets you melt metals down into liquid form and cast them into tool parts. It's honestly one of the most influential progression mods Minecraft has ever had. There were entire mod packs built around this mod, and for years it was practically the default way of handling tools in heavily modded survival worlds. The reason people love this mod is the amount of customization. You aren't really crafting a pickaxe anymore, you're designing one. But at the same time, I have to say, I completely understand why some people might feel overwhelmed by it. Compared to vanilla Minecraft, it's definitely more involved for not that much. You need multiple stations, different part builders, casts, whatever. I don't even understand these systems myself, but even then it's impossible to ignore how important this mod was. My favorite additions and the ones I actually like are things like the longsword and the rapier. Just a Few Fish was a 1.7 mod that could be considered an unofficial precursor to the 1.13 update, as it predates the update by about 4 years and literally almost added the exact same things. With the same things, I mean it literally added actual entities for the cod, the salmon, and the tropical fish, which was just the clownfish here, and the pufferfish, along with the ability to nap them with buckets, just like in 1.13, so that's very oddly specific. Although other mods already had this bucket feature and these same fishes, what distinguished this one from the rest was that it didn't overdo it with filling the oceans with more mobs than the overworld, and instead stuck to expanding the actual fish that were already in vanilla. The mod also featured new fishing mechanics, with these new fishing rods and aquariums, which when I was younger I really liked to create mazes with, very specific. This is a small mod, but this is definitely a must if you're not going to use anything else that fills the oceans, but you don't want them to feel empty either. Dragon Mounts had a simple premise. Once you beat the Ender Dragon, its egg wouldn't be useless, as you could actually take care of it until it hatched, and then you could tame it as a loyal pet, who you could sit with a bone in your hand and most importantly, ride. They function pretty much just as any other pet in Minecraft, even teleporting to you, which can be kind of a problem if you have more than one, especially because these guys have a very high range for teleporting to you. There really isn't much else to say. This is a very vanilla friendly dragon mod. It's a mod that truly feels like it would belong in Minecraft, and it's probably how the developers envisioned those dragons they supposedly once thought of adding. Modular Bosses was a strange mod which never got fully finished, with the goal of having configurable bosses with controllable elements. It's very odd, but that's quite literally what the description on CurseForge says. But this mod is in fact pretty unfinished. The thing you probably have seen about this mod is this giant sandworm that moves at like 10 FPS, and which was quite literally spammed by YouTube channels back in the day. Probably because it was very bizarre and it really just doesn't belong in Minecraft. This project never really reached the level of polish it was aiming for. Let's leave it at that. If the sandworm ate you, there was an entire dungeon reminiscent of Jabu Jabu from Zelda or something, in which you could kill it from the inside by fighting its heart and its brain, but I have no idea how you're supposed to remove the brain shield, and I don't even think it's actually possible. Also, this works being on a separate dimension, which is pretty flimsy and from which many mod reviewers back in the day which I watched for this just fell from. The mod also adds a few weapons, which are probably the coolest things, especially the scythe, and a bunch of other less popular bosses to varying degrees of completion. Interestingly, a public development roadmap for this mod exists via Google Docs, outlining the intended and supposedly in-game features, although only 2 versions were officially ever released. This was a mod that kind of suffered from over-ambition, something many mods really faced back in this era. The developer's final note also said that a primary reason for halting development was that the newer versions of the Forge API removed legacy components that made their existing framework pretty much obsolete. While the execution is notably not the best, I'd say the concepts and mechanics do have a lot of potential. Perhaps a version with a modernized code from the ground up and much more of a cohesive visual style could probably work and realize the original ideas the creator actually had for this mod, maybe adding things like structures to further expand and make this a polished and fun mod. Fossils and Archeology Revival, not to be confused by the name, this isn't a remake of an old mod, although it kind of is. This is the most popular version of Fossils and Archeology, and it came out in 2015. There was a previous non-revival version of this mod, but it was for beta Minecraft, and this is some gameplay from it in 2011. This mod mainly added a fossil block. Mining it would give you everything from just bones to actual fossil chunks you could try and restore. With an analyzer you could extract the contents, and rarely you'd obtain DNA, with which, using a culture vat, you could restore embryos and inject them into animals, or straight up make eggs. For example, here I put a mammoth embryo inside of a pig, and it actually worked. While most of the progression happens through fossils and machines, the world also has a few dig sites, tar pits, and a few other small structures. At the time of recording, the last update was a mere 14 days ago for Forge 1.20.1, with a fabric port also existing for the same version in 1.18. The Grappling Hook Mod was a mod that added multiple fun and quirky grappling hooks with these recipes. I would love to say something else, but there really isn't. They are extremely well made, and I personally consider this the most fun mod from the time in terms of movement, especially with the regular motorized one, because it really has very good momentum. Maybe this mod is also a bit too OP, but I don't think any of us cared about that in 2013. Will you see this mod all throughout the video because I keep using it for fast transport? Yes, you will. I just had to mention it somewhere. Inventory Pets was a simple enough yet novel concept. It added about 60 items, obtained via crafting or by looting either small custom structures or things like monster rooms, and these 60 items are substitutes for real mobs, blocks, or other miscellaneous made up things, or whatever. While I'm speaking, you're seeing a quick sort of montage with many of their right-click or main uses, although most of them also give stuff when held on the inventory after a while, almost like a free drop. I don't really know how to explain. The catch behind this mod is that you have to feed these little guys, with each one of them having specific diets, as you can see, but it's never really too expensive and it is usually sustainable enough for the rewards you get. This mod is also still updated at the time of recording, with constant updates every few months. The Meat Hooks mod was a mostly 1.6 mod which overhauled the ways to get meat. When you killed an animal, not mobs really, just animals, they dropped a pretty ugly sprite of their dead body, supposedly, if you can even tell what that is, and you were able to hang it on a hook and skin it to get the feathers or leather, and then cut down the meat. That's it. That's the whole mod, using this new knife and just cutting the meat. It's a sort of extra step that adds a bit more immersion, but at the same time the sprites are really bad. It's definitely one of those mods that looked more interesting in the YouTube thumbnails than actually in-game. Even then, I think the basic idea had a lot of potential, and there are newer and better mods which do the same thing. You could also put them in a sort of campfire in these sticks. Why? I honestly have no idea, because I've done it myself and I watched it on old YouTube reviews and they always just end up being burned. Lycanite's Mobs was a mod created by Lycanite, which adds a huge amount of mobs, bosses and systems on top of them. You might know it from its inclusion in the popular mod pack Archeology, but it definitely goes way back. We will be using the 1.7.10 version as a base for this video, although the mod was updated all the way up to 1.20. This mod adds over 100 mobs, all specific to biomes and dimensions, which work really well in practice because you genuinely never know what you're walking into. There are, for example, these peaceful machas, which are way too common. Like, just look at this village in particular. It practically has the same or even more amount of macha dinosaur things as it does actual villagers. But well, the nether mobs in particular are very directly inspired by Doom, which is definitely a weird choice for a mod, not just called the Doom mod or something. Beyond the mobs themselves, the mod also features a minion system with a summoning staff, a lot of configurable dungeons, which again were just the trend back then, and summoned bosses like Raboheart, Asmodeus, and Amalgik. There's a bestiary, its own equipment system, and an excessive amount of configuration files if you ever really want to go down a rabbit hole. Visually though, Lycanites is definitely divisive. The creatures use smooth, often highly detailed models that stand out quite a bit from Minecraft's usual blocky style. Some people might like that because it makes everything feel a bit more alien and threatening, while others, like me, just feel like it kind of clashes heavily against the rest of the game. The creator has actually acknowledged this over the years, mentioning that he just personally prefers smoother models over the vanilla aesthetic. And that is where, for example, Lycanite's Redux comes in. It's a community-made resource pack that redesigns many of the mobs into something much closer to Minecraft's style. And it has become a very popular companion for this mod. Regardless of which look you prefer, Lycanite's Mobs is definitely a mod that's very hard to mistake for any other one. Player Rugs was a mod with which you could obtain rugs with player skins when they die being squished, like for example from an anvil. This was a pretty clickable mod for YouTube, and honestly one that would be really fun to have in a server, although the mod just doesn't really work like it should, as it just instantly crashes when obtaining and placing a player rug. I'm pretty sure what's happening is that the mod tries to steal the player's skins via the username, but Mojang eventually migrated to UUIDs and the mod just crashes trying to look for something that doesn't exist. Because that's for the old version, as this mod is also, somehow because of how actually obscure this one is, still being updated all the way up to 26.1, in where it obviously now totally works, as you can see. The CurseForge page is a decade old and barely holds 220,000 downloads, and this mod was extremely covered back then. I will definitely keep this in mind for a foreseeable future, as it's genuinely a pretty fun mod to have in a server or something like that with plenty of friends. Millénaire is a mod which, exactly as the author says, tries to fill the emptiness of Minecraft villages with brand new and more lively ones, based on 11th century cultures. It is definitely an incredible mod, which adds villages which I really like because they feel natural. Like, let me explain. You can often see villagers building their paths, mining, and just generally working. They also mostly don't speak the same language as the player. Beyond the villages themselves, There are also full trading systems, reputation systems, quests, tools to build your own villages, culture-specific crops, blocks, and everything that you can only get by trading, and even an overarching creation quest that ties the entire mod together, as it also adds lore for the entire Minecraft world and its civilizations. This is another one of the most ambitious mods from this era, starting roughly in 1.7 and reaching all the way up to release 1.12.2, when it was last officially updated in 2023. Though there seemingly are plans to update it by what they're saying on their Discord server, but I have no idea if that's going to come to fruition. There were 7 cultures in total in this mod: the Japanese, the Normans, the Indians, the Mayans, the Byzantines, Inuit, and Seljuk Turks, or whatever that is. One thing worth mentioning as well is that Millénaire can be a little buggy sometimes. Like me personally, I couldn't get the 1.7 version working properly at all, and eventually I just moved over to 1.12 and that version did work, but it also both took an absurd amount of time to load, which I don't really think should be the case, and villager interactions for some reason froze the game for a second or two. So just keep in mind that this mod sometimes might be bigger than actual Minecraft. But to be fair, honestly, this mod is trying to do a lot more than most other ones, so there are a lot of little things that eventually can just break. Entire villages are constantly expanding, moving, building structures, and reacting to everything the player does, and all of that sticked in real time. So even now there aren't many mods that make villages feel this alive. Pandora's Box was a mod pretty reminiscent of Lucky Blocks, if not just a bit more destructive. It mostly just added a single item. Would you take a guess? The Pandora's Box, found in dungeons or being craftable. If you placed the box, it would spin, levitate upwards, and summon a random effect. This mod is also pretty broken in all versions. Sometimes it summons something so big that just crushes the game. And I definitely don't think that's intentional. So yeah, there's not much to say about this one either. It really is just another Lucky Blocks. This mod is actually still updated. In fact, what you are now seeing is 1.21.8. Don't be fooled, because I have programmer art remade, which is a texture pack, so it looks like the older versions, but it is 1.21. Dragon Block C was a very popular Dragon Ball mod for Minecraft 1.7.10 and even 1.6.4. It's a bit misleading and somewhat undocumented, but this mod roughly started making the rounds online around 2013 or so. The thing is that the actual installer and the separate jar files it required were always hosted on external pages, and the only ones remaining are re-uploads that don't really help, and CourseForge only received the official page about 5 years ago. So don't let that fool you into thinking this is a recent mod, because I kind of did for a second. I'll make it clear, I'm not much of a Dragon Ball fan, so I genuinely just have no idea what's going on in this mod at pretty much any point. But I do know some basics. Simply by creating a world and pressing a few keys, it becomes immediately clear how massive this mod actually is. It's pretty much what Pixelmon is to Pokemon, but for Dragon Ball and Minecraft. A full conversion of an entire universe crammed into a single Minecraft mod, for which there are entire maps or a lot of servers themed around. First, there's a full character creator where you pick your race, class, and stats. So right off the bat, this feels less like a Minecraft mod and just like a RPG full conversion thing. From there you have Key Energy, which is a bar that grows as you level up and train, actual sustained flight that isn't just creative mode, a dash, the ability to charge and fire energy attacks. There are many structures like the ones you have just seen, and a lot of Dragon Ball characters as in-game mobs and bosses you can fight, train with and all, Something called the Ginyu Force of villains is here, Frieza in 5 different forms. There's also a dimension called the Namek, with green water, green sky and its own biomes and stuff. And what I think is the coolest thing, you can actually find the 7 Dragon Balls scattered all throughout the world. Arrange them in an H shape on the ground and summon Shenron himself to grant you a wish. Again, I don't know Dragon Ball, like at all, but even I can tell this is actually one of the most ambitious older mods we'll cover in this video, and in fact, despite being stuck on 1.7.10, there are still servers only running this mod with players in it. So I guess that says something. Do you know how in something modern like the physics mod by Habna, there are options for mobs to be ragdolls and break and stuff? Well, there used to be a mod called Mob Dismemberment, which was the earliest version, I guess, of such a concept in Minecraft. It is actually also made by iChun. While not many mobs are affected by this, mostly just the main hostile mobs, it is definitely cool enough, and I would have loved it if I discovered it at the time. Obviously, there's not just much to see. You kill the mob, and it dismembers. Although, of course, I had to try to blow up a ton of creepers to see how the game would handle it. Much better than I thought it would. For not using a complex, really well-made physics system and simply using the entities as each piece, honestly the mod really does a good job. Even the blood particles are pretty good without simply overdoing it. Buildcraft was one of the earliest, truly influential technical Minecraft mods, most famously introducing its now iconic quarry. Alongside that came engines, pipes and machines that could automate huge parts of the game, years before automation became something more common in mod packs. There are facades for everything, including modded blocks from like literally every mod. Buildcraft definitely feels older than modern tech mods. There are now much faster and definitely more efficient automation mods, and this one can be a bit too demanding on resources for the actual results you'll get. But that is also kind of the point, because Buildcraft helped define what technical Minecraft mods even looked like. A lot of later automation mods borrowed ideas that Buildcraft had already popularized. You don't necessarily have to have played it yourself. I, for one, hadn't, but you have almost certainly seen its pipes somewhere. For example, something that comes up from my childhood in Minecraft and old YouTube and such is Ratboy Genius and his Potato Canisius video.
This machine creates potato canisius. This is where I make potato canisius.
Even if industrial mods aren't really my thing, I have actually played this in the research of making this video, and it's definitely easy to see why this one became such a classic. Despite the hate it sometimes gets now because of what I said, because there are mods that do this much better, I still think it's a really solid mod, even if newer automation mods have largely built on what it started and gone far beyond that. Deeper Caves was a sort of premature version of Minecraft's cave update. Well, a really twisted and extremely long alternate one, if anything. Instead of generating bedrock at Y level 0, there are blocks that serve as portals. Portals that simply bring you down to the top of a dimension made out of caves. It sounds very weird on paper, so just look at this sped up gameplay of how far you can really go. There are points in which there start to be more caves, more ores, and eventually even compressed ores, which give 3 of the original ore per block. And eventually you can even find a layer of the nether, and at the very end of everything, a bedrock layer. Which isn't actually the end, because there are fragmented bedrock blocks you can still mine and go further down in. There are also a few new ores, which I honestly always appreciate, and even a whole layer called Deep Cave, which is pretty much an older version of the Deep Slate layer. This mod is just crazy. Like, the possibilities to get lost here are pretty immense. And you better have a backpack mod so you don't run out of pickaxes or blocks or whatever, because otherwise I have no idea how you're getting out of this one. Mutant Creatures introduced a new type of item called Chemical X, craftable with obsidian and a water bottle. With it, you can turn a few hostile mobs into counterparts that drop special loot and are pretty much bosses. My favorite by a lot is the Mutant Skeleton. It's a regular boss fight, if not a bit unfair, but if you manage to defeat them, which I did cheese a little in this gameplay, this will happen. The skeleton's bones and parts scatter as you're able to collect them and make yourself a cool armor, which would also give you a speed effect. While this mod may seem small, it is definitely one I'd like to include in a 1.7 playthrough or something. The Undertale Mod. This is a very loud example of the Undertale craze of 2015 and 2016 and the human necessity of just shoving Undertale everywhere at the time. This mod basically just added all of the main characters as mobs, along with a few ones that were bosses. Bosses in the sense they have a boss bar, because just look at how easily I actually killed Mr. Sands over here. The mobs don't really do much, except for Undyne, who transforms like that into Undyne the Undying. Yeah. The coolest thing about this mod are definitely the blocks, which are pretty much only for map making. In fact, this cool background gameplay you're watching is not a texture pack or anything. This is the mod's official demo map, something I had never seen before with any of these mods, so I definitely just had to show it off. As you can see, there are blocks well made to replicate with redstone many of the mechanics from Undertale, mostly from the ruins, but also including things like the light mushrooms from Waterfall, which are definitely a highlight. Everything else in the mod, though, isn't much of a highlight. The coolest mob, in a lot of quotation marks, is Omega Flowey, but I don't really think it's working. It's supposed to spawn flies, and I think it even had fire, but it does nothing in the versions I found. The mob for the fly is also there, but it doesn't do anything. It also drops a red soul item, with which you can glitch the ground and break it, and sometimes Chara or Kara, I'm not getting into the pronunciation dilemma. I know it's meant to be from character. Shut up, please. And then you can fight Kara, Chara, whatever, and nothing happens. There is no special loot, there's no anything, just a lot of experience points. I know this mod wasn't the best, but hey, it was in fact pretty much the only decent Undertale one at the time. It worked well on YouTube. The blocks are pretty well made actually, and I think it's a great way of showcasing the Undertale fever from 2015 and 16 in this video. Biomes'O'Plenty was, is, and probably will still be one of the most popular Minecraft mods, if it isn't the most popular biome one. For the sake of this video, you're looking at a montage of biomes in the 1.7.10 version, which are actually pretty different looking to the current ones and were selected via world type. The mod also overhauled certain vanilla biomes with small blocks like corals, cattails, flowers, or blocks like mud, which were also kind of incorporated into those pre-existing biomes. Not only did we love Biomes'O'Plenty for its biomes, but the actual blocks are so varied and so well made. Literally everything was a hit with this mod, and I wouldn't have it any other way. Some people still consider it the definitive biome mod, while others just prefer newer alternatives or just the older versions of this mod itself. Personally, I have enjoyed pretty much every version of the mod that I have tried. Maybe it doesn't help that in newer versions I also mix it in with more mods, but oh well. You would never guess what the weird mobs mod added. weird mobs. Just look at them. This is another one I just can't even explain, I'll do a quick roundup. Minecraft modding really used to be the Wild West. Like, what? What even is this? The worst thing about this mod is that these things, all of them, spawn naturally and in huge amounts. Just look at these cool birds, whatever that name is. Each mob has weird drops. Sometimes they give you effects, and you can tame at the very least one called the Big Ear, according to a description I found on a defunct website, but I don't even know how to do that. Why does this mod exist? I don't know. It would actually be a nightmare trying to play a survival world with this thing on, even just because of the noises these make. It's so varied, so wildly different and just plain wrong, that it's almost good. It's so bad it's almost good. Too Much TNT was a mod which added a lot of TNT variants. They ranged from mere multipliers to having stranger ones that spawned blocks, liquids, or things like that. Some of them are a bit more abstract than others. Others are destructive, to say the least. But overall, it's a pretty cool mod. These are crafted with uranium as well, which is a new ore, and like I said, I always appreciate some variety when mining. Little Blocks was a sort of spiritual prequel to something more modern, like Chisels and Bits. It came out roughly around 2015, opposed to Little Blocks, which came around in 2012 or 2013. Sometimes I just can't find actual dates, and I'd rather not just lie. It was definitely the most polished mod that did this thing at the time. And as you can see, you actually had a lot of freedom, and even things like Liquid actually worked. It's not a one-to-one with Chisels and Bits, because it's not actually chiseling a block, and instead it's placing a miniature version of the block that you can enable with a special wand you can craft, and it's basically really cool for making dioramas and things like that, although it is definitely a bit flimsy with crashes. I also wanted to test whether liquids worked, and at last, even redstone worked, and TNT, although TNT did end up crashing the game. Extra Biomes XL was a pretty vanilla-like biomod, as in fact, there barely are any new blocks aside from a few flowers and wood types. Similarly to Biomes'o'Plenty, I'll just show as many biomes as I can in the background while I speak. Extra Biomes XL, despite being as popular as it once was, it was sadly left to rot in 1.7.10 with basically no plans to update it since then. And in fact, this is sadly one of the biggest mods in this video which genuinely just have no remake or enhanced port or remaster or anything. This mod is truly stuck in 1.7.10, despite the source code being publicly available on GitHub since 2014 with its last update. If I do have to say something more negative or neutral, it's precisely that because it's tied to such an old version and it was never maintained, it can be rough around the edges performance-wise. Sometimes there can be stuttering or unnecessary lag in some very specific biomes with huge amount of really tall and really big trees, but a decent updated port will probably suffice to fix all of that. Overall, this is a mod that people prefer to Biomes'o'Plenty in this version. Many people, in fact. I don't know if I am one of those people, but I definitely can't pick one. It's just that it didn't really get far, otherwise we would probably had a very different story to tell for this century. Rails of War was a surprisingly old, yet still somewhat updated Minecraft mod, which added tracks, trains, and gear to power them on, along with a few blocks. I will be honest, this mod took me a while to figure out. Most mechanics aren't really explained in-game, so I had to watch a few YouTube videos and guides to even get a train moving. And once I did, I just ran into a ton of issues. The game started lagging pretty heavily, like to the point nothing was actually being checked in game. And that said, this is also a surprisingly old mod with a lot going on. So it's not completely surprising, but still it's something to keep in mind. Because this mod is in fact pretty prone to this extreme lag, so much so that the developer had to include a full item just to remove everything in the case of such lag. There are these types of stock, these types of rails, and a bunch of blocks that don't necessarily look vanilla, but it definitely looks like a mod that was really taken care of. I'm sure someone who loves locomotion, like my dad or something, would have a blast building their own stuff, just like the map showcased in the background of this entry, which by the way has its link in the description. If you see anything that looks like an adventure map or just some background map that I probably downloaded in this video, chances are, if I didn't make it myself, it will be in the description. Decorcraft was a mod that added hundreds and hundreds of items to decorate your world with. It's surprisingly survival friendly, as pretty much everything is craftable with just clay, with the use of this deco bench table and new colored clay items. Decorcraft just has so much of everything. I tried to put together a showcase world to show as many things as I could, but understand this is probably not even half of what the mod actually adds. You can also place things in more than just the cardinal directions, as you can slightly rotate pretty much every prop, except a few select ones that are just really cubic. Decorcraft is still alive. Nowadays, though there are newer versions of it that I haven't personally tried, it's true that they have completely switched their focus more towards a separate Bedrock Edition version of this mod as a $5 marketplace add-in. That new Java version, you could probably try it for yourself, but it's quite different from the old one as pretty much everything has been made from the ground up to be more in line with the Bedrock Edition, which is more interactive and such. Clay Soldiers was a pretty popular and surprisingly old mod for Minecraft, although it was officially updated up to Minecraft 1.12.2. The mod added a few structures to help you get started, and most importantly, a variety of clay soldiers and that few animal mounts that the soldiers were able to ride. The biggest focus and the point of the mod was something like what you're looking at, setting an arena or just leaving them be and putting a big chunk of soldiers against one another, as they were pretty racist to each other and will go after anything that's not quite their color. It was one of those mods where you just understood the entire concept in about 10 seconds. You could have a lot of fun with that. Oh, and by the way, there's a whole system of upgrades you can give them by dropping items on the ground, which is extremely cool. They'll just pick them up, and as you can see in this footage, you can make them shoot thunder, have shields, be more hostile towards everything, even their own team, faster, and so many other things. The whole list is on the Feed the Beast wiki, which will be linked down below next to the link of this mod. And about these guys that I gave the items to, this pumpkin dude, who had another ward which makes it attack everything, even his own team like I said, single-handedly survived all of the 4 remaining sides from the last clip and beat everyone to death himself, including its own kin. Yeah. Sans Minimap was a mod widely recognized as the first actual minimap mod for Minecraft. While history on these things is blurry at best, what I can be sure of is that Sans Minimap dates back to alpha versions, but I was only able to find a few archives without proper downloads, because the original Minecraft forum post is long gone. This is beta 1.3-01, using Rizugami's mod loader, which was kind of like a Forge precursor. The version you're seeing is also arguably the most popular, and it's also the earliest one available in mcarchived.net. As you can see, it was a very typical minimap mod. It has a working waypoint system, which you can create, enable and disable, and the map which even lets you open a big one. And a last thing to note, it's the little details that make this minimap mod different. It looks weird because there isn't real shading on the map. It almost just looks like a regular Minecraft map item with a bit of weird ambient occlusion applied to it. But I think it was a very interesting mod to mention, especially as later we will take a look at newer ones which were kind of related to this one. The block launcher mod, despite the simple premise, was actually very cool. It let you craft 3 different types of a bunch of weapons, having them be normal, sticky, bouncy, and for some even higher widespread ranges. As you can see, there isn't much of a mystery with this mod. You can use pretty much any block to shoot as ammo. You can throw almost every block except some really heavy stuff like obsidian or bricks. And hey, there's also a TNT launcher, which I wonder what that does. As this is entry number 52, I had already covered too much TNT, and I had the mod active on the background, so I wanted to test if the TNT launcher actually worked with its TNT variants. And to not much of a surprise, it doesn't. But I tried. Still, you can launch TNT with every other launcher, except it's not ignited. And here is a showcase of what I mean with some can be bouncy. The Portal mod, or the Portal Gun mod, is yet again a video game adjacent one, this time for Valve's Portal games. Well, if you know Portal, you probably know where this mod is going, because there really isn't much to add. The mod basically just adds the Portal Gun, 3 music discs, and a few other things like turrets or the companion cube. It's actually also made by Aichun, which, as you can see, he was a very recurrent figure in the Minecraft modding space. It sounds like a simple crossover, but it actually works really well. Minecraft's sandbox gives you way more freedom than Portal ever did, so people immediately started just toying around, building maps, puzzle rooms, and all sorts of stupid contraptions around it. Other things that could use momentum, like the not so great Sonic mod, or something like older superhero or car mods, absolutely never had momentum this good, and usually stuck to Minecraft's regular movements, or did something a bit broken like the Sonic mod. But the Portal Gun here absolutely nails it. It feels like Portal. Also, I have no idea what causes this, but in 1.7.10, neither the music discs or the turrets seem to work, which is a big bummer. Especially since I do remember the music discs working at one point, and I'm pretty sure the turrets did as well. Ender Zoo was a mod that added stronger, yet not too different variants for existing Minecraft mobs. The Ender Mini, a smaller, faster version of the Enderman. A Concussion Creeper, which instead of breaking blocks just randomly teleported you. A Fallen Knight, which would also ride a zombie horse. A Wither themed witch and its hostile Wither cat. A Dire Wolf. And whatever this dirty slime is meant to be. The items the mobs drop aren't really anything too special. With them you can craft TNT variants that do the same thing as some of these mobs. The most notable drop though is the Withering Dust, which unlocks a way to craft weather effect potions. This is a very great but at the same time very small mod. It also has a great and much more in-depth remake for current versions, which at the time of recording has just reached 2 million downloads, and it is basically the same mod, but newer, with many things, and much more polished. Balkan's Weapons was a weapon mod that added a bunch of miscellaneous weapons, although they all mostly have a grounded and rustic feeling, fitting right into the Minecraft vanilla aesthetic at the time. There are weirder things like flails, many kinds of swords, boomerangs, oh, and an entire pirate-like cannon. There are also training dummies, and even firearms. The Wasteland mod introduces a brand new world type for a generation, a wasteland. It is pretty much identical to the overworld, without any new blocks and just a single different mob. As the title implies, there is no water and there is no life. Well, there is water, but it's just really hard to come by, and so is food. Your best bet for food is literally just looting structures or rotten flesh. And this mod is actually still pretty great to play with. It doesn't do anything overly, special, but it does create a pretty good challenge, which I'm sure has to be fun in hardcore mode. There are abandoned houses, bases, and even villages, which are probably your best bet for finding that water. And I also checked, the Nether is the exact same. So that means the game is in fact possible to beat, and thus I located the stronghold, spent probably way too much time trying to find the disgustingly hidden portal, and finally checked the end. And it's also the same. But hey, the Wasteland mod is really cool, and I definitely see how a lot of people made let's plays of this one. The Five Nights at Freddy's mod. Not Freddy with a Y letter, no, Freddy's, like you're seeing on screen. Although internally it's named properly, the websites that hosted it and the names for the mobs are just wrong. And this is kind of the pinnacle of disgustingly low quality mods that somehow got very covered in YouTube. This mod was made in the very strange time period in which Five Nights at Freddy's 3 had just come out and 4 had a few teasers already, and something like Springtrap. Yeah. If you are, in fact, into Five Nights at Freddy's, you are probably already familiar with this Springtrap, or at least something like this ugly Chica model, because they are in fact based on the i6ness, Splinks, and all of those SFM Gmod models from that era. The closest to the Springtrap I can probably think of right off the top of my head is probably this one, but I'm pretty sure there's another one with the exact same type of hole just right under the head and the neck. But yeah, this mod isn't precisely high quality. It doesn't add new blocks, by the way, this is just a texture pack. And the entities, if I mentioned Gary's mod, it's because this mod isn't much of a Five Nights at Freddy's mod, and it's more of a attempt to bring back the original NPCs of Five Nights at Freddy's from Gary's mod into Minecraft. They didn't do anything, and when you looked away, they move an inch, as you can see. It's what they did in Gmod, and it's what they do in this mod. There's also Horror Freddy, which is really funny to me. Weird Cody, Joe, and Kraken Robot mobs. I have no idea who invited these guys, but I'm pretty sure they must either be a YouTuber or something like that. And basically every regular animatronic from the second game, the toys, the wizards, and some from the first game except regular Freddy. I have no idea why. And again, they all just became the exact same as the Gmod ones. This mod also fills your inventory with slop because it adds statues of these models. Do you really want to have a statue of Horror Freddy in your base? The original Super Mario Bros. Mod, also sometimes called Super Mario 2 or Mario 2 because there was a previous older and less popular version, I don't know about that, This is very similar in terms of formula to the Sonic mod we mentioned earlier, and it's mostly based on Super Mario Bros. 1 for the NES and kind of Super Mario World, adding pretty much every tileset from the first game, enemies from it, and some other weirder out of place inclusions like Yoshi or Super Mario World's Feather Cape. The mod, like I said, is just like the Sonic one. Though it has some things in survival, it's mostly themed about creative, and just making maps. Worlds now have this very annoyingly common castle structure every literally 100 blocks, and when you enter, this happens. I know Bowser sounds a little weird, in fact, plenty of things are a bit weird in this mod. Like Toad. That is definitely like not Toad at all. The items also weirdly have their Super Mario World sprite, despite almost everything being Super Mario 1 themed. The coins don't really serve a purpose, and there is a Mario armor which is what lets you jump on mobs, break bricks, and jump on enemies. The original Backpack mod, simply called Backpack Mod, was much simpler than any current one like Traveler's Backpack for example. It genuinely just added two main items and its backpacks, leather bound with strings, and with which you could obtain tanned leather by cooking it in a furnace. A normal backpack was craftable with 8 of leather, and a big one with 8 of the tanned leather. Instead of functioning as a wearable thing for your back, they were merely just an item which held things like a chest, something more akin to the current bundles we now have in the game. The small backpack has the size of a chest, and the bigger one the size of a double chest. And there really weren't any limits, so you could have as many of them as you wanted in your inventory. Was this mod realistic? No, definitely not. But that takes nothing away from the enjoyment. While there really isn't much else to show or to do with it, I mean it's just backpacks, it's basically a GUI for a portable chest, and was included in literally every mod pack from back in the day. Do you personally prefer modern backpack mods, or is something like this more your style? I do have to say I almost kind of prefer it for a more survival playthrough, at least one that's not going to be a long-term world. It's a cheap item and you might lose it, so I don't really see it as much of an imbalance to the game, especially when playing with mod packs in which you're constantly looting and your inventory is usually filled to a brim. Evilcraft is a magic themed mod based on evil things, who would have guessed? I mean, the main ore is literally called Dark Gem, and everything is about death, blood, and such. The entire main gimmick of the mod is actually utilizing blood as a fuel, being obtained by, for example, killing these 4 poor bastards with fall damage. With this blood-stained floor, you can extract their blood using a blood extractor, crafted with the new spikes and dark gems, and with it you can just start collecting blood. With enough blood, you can make a small lake of blood, and basically varnish the new dark ores in it, converting them into powered dark gems. From here on, you can craft a blood infusion core and make a ton of bloody blocks. With the blood infuser, for example, you can speed up the process of varnishing the dark gems with blood without having to constantly fight the actual blood liquid, which automatically hardens. The blood chest is also a very cool thing that works kind of like mending, letting you repair armor or tools, but instead with the use of blood. Although if you abuse it, you can also get sometimes malicious effects, like a so-called breaking, which is the opposite of unbreaking. From here on, you unlock a ton of recipes like the Blood Peril of Transportation, which is a blood-fueled permanent ender peril for example, and it works just like a regular tech mod, in which eventually you can automate everything. You will also notice these structures scattered across the world. These are actually for collecting weather in a bottle, which you can then just throw or craft into many things. I won't go much into detail for these kind of big, complex technical mods forward, because I like to keep entries more or less the same in terms of size, so I'll just try to capture the entire gist of it, as I won't get into the blood-based machinery entirely, or the customizable brooms and such. Now this is the last time we're actually mentioning Aichan in this video, but he seemed to be quite a Valve fan, since he also did a gravity gun mod, very akin to his Portal one. Again, though there were slightly newer versions that were better, we will be showcasing the older one for 1.7 specifically. This mod does exactly what it promises. It adds Half-Life 2's gravity gun as a working item, along with its supercharged form. And hey, I even got a cool City 17 map to show it off. This is, as expected from Aichan, extremely well made, as the physics for the blocks are surprisingly robust, and they do kind of feel like Source Engine. You can pretty much nab any block or mob and just do whatever you want with them. Move them, throw them somewhere, or just gently have them fall over. But it actually works like a charm. You can even use it to kill mobs, although it's a bit hard to actually get it to hit. The supercharged gravity gun, by the way, doesn't really seem to be all that different, it's just slightly faster, so yeah. Battle Towers was another extremely popular one. This one happened to only add structures and a single mob. The entire thing about this mod is pretty noticeable. Though it is very simple, it adds towering structures that either go upwards or sometimes underground, containing multiple floors with mob spawners and a chest with loot that end in a small boss fight with a so-called Battle Tower Golem. That's literally it though. It's a very small mod, but these kinds of structures do add a lot to a survival playthrough, especially with friends. I do have one pretty big complaint, and it's how common these things are. By default, they generate as little as 196 blocks apart, which really isn't much in a Minecraft world. Still, similarly to the Mario mod we saw earlier, this is probably because the render distance used to be so low, people kind of measured distances in different ways before, and structures seemed quite more rare than what they usually were. The Animals Plus mod was an animal mod similar in concept to Mutant Creatures, but with a different execution. The difference being that most of these mobs really do look like they would belong in an old Minecraft update, being more fitting than Mutant Creatures' higher resolution textures and fragmented models. But that's pretty much it, because in fact, this mod adds 0 items. No special saddles, no drops, and pretty much nothing. I love this mod in the regards that every single one of these mobs genuinely looks like it would belong in an old Minecraft update, but what's true is that they provide nothing more than ambience. A problem which Minecraft updates themselves would kind of suffer years later, according to who you ask. I really like how all of these mobs look, move, and sound. It doesn't feel like they are a mod this old, honestly, but sadly that's really all I can say. I also love how the fish look, by the way. It's a different direction from Vanilla's and just a few fish from earlier with these big round eyes, but it somehow totally works. Blockling adds a naturally spawned mob called the Blockling, which you can tame with any kind of wildflower. The premise is simple. They function pretty much like a sort of Pokemon. They will hunt down everything you hit, just like a dog, but earn experience while doing so to keep leveling up. They also don't die and instead are just dropped into an item that you can spawn again. Each level makes them grow in size and so be able to eat bigger upgrades. Those upgrades are either craftable or found in dungeon chests. And with them, the Blockling earns a tier, becomes stronger, faster, and generally just more resilient to attacks. You can also equip them with a sword or shurikens, which they don't really use that much. Mr. Crayfish's furniture mod started roughly in release 1.7 and quickly became the most popular standalone furniture mod. I made this quick showcase map to show many of my favorite pieces. This mod isn't like DecoCraft in the sense that it was much more random, and instead it feels like an actual only furniture mod. There are many families of blocks, usually with many colors, and they are all ordered in the creative inventory. There are, for example, a lot of appliances, like washing machines, fridges, wardrobes, and it's all interactable. There's also a few new food items, TVs that you can put gifts on, holiday decorations, don't even get me started on the amount of chairs and such, and even bathroom props, we have a lot of those as well. Toilets, in fact, working toilets. Yeah. Mr. Crayfish's furniture mod sort of stopped development 3 years ago, but it didn't. You see, it is now categorized as the legacy version of the mod, whereas there exists a totally new one with a whole electricity and power system, which I have used and it's different, but it's pretty cool and is now updated constantly, whereas the old one will forever be stuck for Minecraft Forge 1.20.1. Helpful Villagers was another mod that tried to transform Minecraft's villages. They changed how the villagers generally looked, and made them a tad bit more like players. This is basically like a mod solely focused on that job aspect I mentioned from Minecraft Comes Alive, but much more polished and specialized. You can put an item frame and an item related to a job next to a door in a house, and villagers nearby will have the option unlocked for said job inside of this profession's GUI. A bit weird, but from then on you just give them a tool and the villagers will start working for whatever you want them to work in. They actually do it pretty well, not like the MCA ones. Even the miners, surprisingly, just look at how deep this dude actually got in like 10 minutes. There's fishermen, soldiers, archers, farmers. There are a ton of jobs, and as far as I tested them, they all worked, except for, oddly enough, the first one I tried, the lumberjack. It seemed to have worked on YouTube, but something is completely messed up by now. They walk towards nothing and eventually they either get stuck or die. Honestly, though, there are much better alternatives now. This mod was pretty great, especially for survival, as you could pretty much enslave them for free, and that's about all I can say about this mod. Ender.io was one of the most complete tech mods from the Silver Age of Minecraft. This is probably the mod that you probably would find stuffed in most tech mod packs for 1.7 and beyond, and it's currently sitting at a whopping 122 million downloads in CurseForge. The whole mod is built around the idea of conduits, which are basically a cable or tube that, unlike for example Buildcraft, you can actually stack together. Obviously, like most of these mods, you'll first need to get fuel and create energy. Eventually you can make an alloy smelter, which basically becomes your new crafting table, and the sag mill, used for extracting other materials from blocks and items, as you can see. Such alloys, most importantly the dark steel, are where the progression for this mod actually starts, as it's used for machines, tools, armor, and everything that has its own separate systems. From then on, this mod just genuinely spirals into insanity with automation, powered mob spawners, literal teleportation, and just so much more I can't even comprehend. Before Minecraft release 1.3.1, commands were not a thing. In fact, the chat didn't even exist in single player. Some commands were slowly added, and the game mode command, for example, came out as late in beta 1.8. But again, it was only available in multiplayer servers. And here's where mods came in. Mods which, by the way, I think it's interesting to quickly explain. While now we have, for a very long time we have had things like Forge. Before Forge we had something like Risugami's mod loader, or simply mods like this one, which were installed by modifying the actual game's jar file. The Java file the game directly loads all of its contents from, well, these mods were installed by simply opening that file with something like WinRAR and dragging and dropping both the loaders or the mods or whatever in there. Though you always had to remove a folder called meta-inf, which was the game's signature to check if everything was actually correct. This is the case, for example, for this mod, single player commands, the original one. posted in December of 2010 by user CMode downscore 415, which precisely did what the name entails. Creative mode did not exist, so there was no equivalent to a game mod command, though you could fly and just set your health to infinite. You could spawn items with aliases made by the developers of the mod, but most importantly with their numerical IDs, and even change your speed, spawn weird mobs like the Giant, which has a working AI by this point, which was later removed, and much more. I thought it was interesting to show one of the most popular and early mods in action in such a video, even if there really isn't much to visually show. And hey, in some versions, like Alpha 1.2.6, you could even spawn stranger mobs, like players, which we have already mentioned in the channel. Tale of Kingdoms was a surprisingly old mod which pioneered in RPG Minecraft mods. The premise was that upon pressing Y, you could summon a kingdom, like it genuinely just summoned where you were. And then you could slowly gain the people's trust by doing quests, and eventually get away from this kingdom and build your own, in which you would literally manage everything. This mod was a bit hard to come by because of the amount of remakes and remasters that there have been, and it doesn't quite work like it should. When you earn enough prestige, or well, worthiness, which is how the game actually calls it, you can talk with this idiot and supposedly get out and build your own kingdom. Because I didn't quite know what I was doing or how, I accidentally built my new kingdom on top of the starting one. And for some reason, the Y key, which is supposed to summon the kingdom, did not ever work in any other world in this same safe directory. The thing is, ignoring the other floating and now destroyed kingdom, you were meant to use this slightly broken GUI to give this same idiot as before materials and slowly build houses, shops and much more. The mod also functioned with gold, not gold as in material gold, but a gold that would drop when killing mobs or obtainable when selling items to citizens. Honestly, for what it's worth and how old it actually is, it's surprisingly well made. There was already a remake of it going around in 2016 or 17, and there are so many other remakes of it, all of them which basically just lend the ideas and inspiration from this one. Still, I'm kind of bummed I wasn't able to quite show it off properly, but trust me, the mod just didn't work. Even when I managed to actually make my town, the buildings didn't get built. I don't know what's going on with this mod. Previously we talked about Sand's minimap, made by Cineris. That mod was very tied to early Minecraft history, as we just saw it running on Minecraft Beta 1.3, but it was still discontinued not long after. That's where Ray's minimap kind of comes into the picture. An entirely client-side minimap mod made by a Japanese developer called Ray FNSK, heavily influenced by Sans. It had a variety of features like an actual bump map, automatic block coloring based on texture packs, and even biome colors and entity radars. Ray's minimap itself was surprisingly short-lived, roughly around 2013 or 2014, but it was community patches like the user's Zedridor that eventually made it work on versions like 1.7.10. There were also other competitors, which we will see in just a few minutes. One of them, in fact, was directly derived from Sans, rather than just being inspired by it. Damage Indicators was one of those mods that was a literal must-have. When I say this is that literally every YouTuber, either a Let's Player, reviewer, or whatever, always had this exact mod. You have actually already been seeing this mod all throughout the video, and if you were active around the community from 2013 up to like 2017, you have probably already recognized it. It's literally as simple as that it both shows the top left GUI with the stretched icon of hostile or passive, with the mob's name and its health. The damage a mob takes when you hit them is also now shown in the form of these orange numbers. This is an extremely simple mod. It does nothing else, but at the same time, it was a must and it would have been a crime not to mention it, as this video is very heavily inspired on the age of mod reviews, in which people literally always had this one. More Player Models was a mod spanning from Minecraft release 1.0 upwards, which simply let you customize and save characters. Like, you could select human, modify your skin and all, but you could also become mobs. But unlike Morph, it was in fact purely cosmetical. If anything, you could have a higher or lower view, but it wasn't really cheating as the hitbox did not actually change. This mod was great. It was very customizable and it was also special because it had some small details that were really cool, like tools and weapons being automatically shed in your back, or the 3D layers and skins becoming actual 3D. This was another one like damage indicators in the sense that everyone had it, whether they used it much or not. If you ever saw a YouTuber with 3D layers on their skin, they almost certainly had this mod. I myself used it for years simply playing on servers, and I barely even interacted with it after the first few times. This mod was last officially updated 2 years ago at the time of recording for Minecraft version 1.20.4. Thaumcraft is arguably the best and most comprehensive magic mod for Minecraft, and it's based on the concept of thaumatology, the study of miracles and, well, magic. This mod doesn't treat magic as, ooh, wizards or something like that, and instead it tries to lean more into a science direction. Everything starts with these crystals, and then you can craft Salis Mundus, and with it you can do things like this. That's pretty cool, right? You can also obtain a research table the same way. And with this research table, you can elaborate theories and reach your own conclusions in this really cool GUI, and then you can also collect knowledge and then create spells. The entire mod is basically built around the idea of elements, all of which are documented in both the Thaumatorium book and the wikis. You will literally stew things on a new cauldron called the Crucible, and everything is extremely well guided with the guidebook we just got. Although, if you aren't careful and stir too much magic randomly without really knowing what you're doing, there will be side effects, as you can actually contaminate your world with flux, this disgusting purple thing that first appears as a rift and later slowly contaminates into nearby blocks. Also, I'd rather not really get my hands dirty, but Thaumcraft is usually split into separate generations depending on the Minecraft version or version range. The footage you've just seen is from Thaumcraft 6 on Minecraft 1.12, but a lot of these systems have been very different from one version to another, so I mostly just try to stick to the general ideas of the mod rather than trying to explain every mechanic in detail. Animal Bikes was nothing but a strange mod. Actually, it's by the creators of the more player models we have just seen, and it includes a bunch of mobs, often craftable, simply labeled as animal bikes. They aren't pets, and neither they are tamed. They are literally just bikes with an animal skin, or well, model, and with special abilities sometimes. There were 23 of them in the last 1.7 version, which is the one we are using, and some of them could fly, others could shoot things, and generally it was just a jolly and purposeless mod. Aside from transport, obviously, they're also very unique to do races with friends with, or generally just steal them from people because they really are just a right click away from it. This is a very innocent, old Minecraft feeling mod, which is also like disgustingly old. It dates back to literally November 4th, 2011, which was still beta Minecraft 1.9, and it's somehow survived all these years. You can currently find animal bikes on CurseForge, and it even has archives for the original beta 1.8.1 releases. Up, Down, and All Around is probably the newest mod on this video, dating back only to Minecraft 1.10.2, which was already 10 years ago by the release of this video, as this version came out in June of 2016. This mod was a pioneer in gravitational shenanigans, as it let you control gravity with the new anti-mass ore, by creating things like anchors that will freeze the player's gravity into specific directions. This mod was also heavily used for things like modded challenges in YouTube, but it was also just extremely fun to play around with. There are also blocks to alter players' gravity from afar, and even a more complex gravitational controller. This was a very great mod that sadly never really got past 1.12, as newer mods came and went with similar purposes and perhaps even better executions. By the way, this is really random, but release 1.10.2 is actually my favorite old Minecraft version to actually play with in the modern day. I could talk about that sometime. Mob Armourer is a mod I cherry-picked for one very specific thing. It showcases what the actual average mod used to be like back in the day. This mod is unhinged. It's nonsensical and basically the definition of quantity over quality. It supposedly added armor themed around mobs that you could craft yourself with their drops, and they would give you special permanent effects. And that is supposedly, again, the purpose of this mod. Supposedly, because all of these armor sound fine and dandy until they eventually start becoming weird things like a blue blaze, Herobrine, or some other weird self-inserts I genuinely have no idea how to actually obtain or craft. Because this mod also adds a shit ton of mobs and bosses and whatever, that as far as I know, some of them don't even spawn anywhere and are probably just summoned in some super specific way, if there even is one. This mod just added so much bullshit that when you were a kid, eventually something was probably fun for you. It also added another shitload of weapons that are either craftable or impossible to obtain, I think, or locked behind bosses. Like, seriously, this mod is just completely crazy. It barely makes any sense. The mob armors or the custom mobs aren't nothing to go about, really. I just wanted to take a minute to appreciate the fact that many mods we downloaded weren't actually something like the hyper-polished Ender.io or Thaumcraft. They were something like this. There are even like 4 dimensions that I know of with more incomprehensive stuff going on. Tropicraft was mostly a dimension mod, which also sprinkled a few blocks, or well, mostly just plants through the overworld. By collecting pineapples, coconuts and bamboo, you could craft yourself a piña colada. And if you drank it under specific conditions and time, you would be transported into a tropical realm. It functions as a whole new dimension, home to many new mobs, blocks and even structures. In there you'll find new mobs like toxic frogs, new monsters, new dungeons, and generally just a lot more than just the tropical aesthetic, which is already pretty cool on itself. This was actually a pretty big mod, even if it doesn't seem like it. And it even has guides that guide you through every nook and cranny from the mod. You'll even find civilizations of these guys called Koa, although they aren't precisely loot worthy or anything. And this mod is actually still being fully updated to support Minecraft 26.2 at the time of recording, and a bunch of versions in between, receiving updates literally every few weeks. So if you're interested, you know what to do. The Furby Mania Mod was a mod derived from the absolute Furby craze these things had in the late 90s to early 2000s. This mod was, unsurprisingly, weird. It adds silicon, which you can craft by mixing sand and redstone, and which you can use to craft Furby CPUs, and then Furbies. They are extremely basic pets that you can tame with redstone blocks, and they are pretty annoying, fast as hell for no reason, and will sometimes lag your game to death as well. They also can be giving instructions that you can craft. Because it gets weirder. You craft these instructions, you give them to the Furbies, and they just do really unbalanced things. With things, I mean they literally carve a 1000 block tunnel if necessary to find diamonds, a structure, or emeralds, or whatever. Even sometimes just sacrificing themselves in the process. They also drop everything when they die, so you can just build a new one and forget about the previous one. Oh, and they also poop redstone. Right. Divine RPG was definitely one of the biggest mods out there, especially at the time. It featured an exaggerated amount of new mobs, extremely OP tools and gears that low-key make something like Tinker's Construct or Thaumcraft a bit pointless, a ton of bosses, and a bunch of dimensions that you slowly unlock in order. The progression loop is pretty straightforward. You start by mining a few new overworld ores, and once you've got enough gear, you can kill one of the mod's earlier bosses to get the material needed for your first portal. From there, each dimension portal is built out of blocks made from the previous dimension's ore, so you're basically just grinding one world to unlock the portal to the next. The dimensions themselves aren't really anything revolutionary now, but back then, just having this many places to explore in a single world was pretty crazy. Looking back now, I do think the main progression thing gets a little repetitive, as a lot of the dimensions are also just almost like if they were Aether reskins. I would have liked to see a bit more variety between them, although the side dimensions like the maze one and the snow themed one definitely do help break that pattern. While small quality of life improvement mods that barely change one or two things are a pretty recent trend for Minecraft mods, they have generally always have been a thing, just not quite as common. This is the case for Tree Capitator, for example, which take a guess on what it does. It is as simple as that. It's not as broken as it could be, because it also makes the logs harder to break, and it doesn't just break every build because you can control it with shift, as it will just break normally. It's a pretty cool mod that started as early as Minecraft release 1.2.5 and was maintained until 1.8, after which equivalent mods just eventually filled its gap. Wayla, or What Am I Looking At, was the first dedicated mod about this, looking at something HUD element you've probably noticed all throughout the video as well. It served as a multi-purpose HUD, covering block and mod names, contents and APIs to let mods add their own custom information. It's very reminiscent of damage indicators, which we just saw, as it in fact also displays mobs, though damage indicators displayed them from a much higher distance, whilst Wayla is a bit more balanced and fair. There wasn't really a big dramatic ending, as the project simply ceased active development, which prompted other mods like Here's What You're Looking At or Wayla, maybe, to be born, as explicit forks and modified ports of Wayla, trying to keep it compatible with everything it was before. And there is even another recent successor called Jade, as the Here's What You're Looking At team just got bored of Minecraft modding around 1.16. There is quite a bit of lineage for this mod, as you can see, but this is an extremely useful one for mod packs, someone who doesn't really know about new updates, or even just somebody completely new at the game. That's why everyone used it and it was so beloved. If modern social media has fried your dopamine receptors so much that you genuinely can't stand waiting for Minecraft's regular furnaces, More Furnaces had you covered. It adds 5 furnaces with different uses to the game, all crafted with the iron furnace and then upgraded progressively. Some of them are faster, slower, have more or have less slots, and the netherrack one doesn't even need coal. This was last updated for Minecraft 1.12.2, but there is also a very similar mod which isn't quite this one, which does exactly the same thing, called Iron Furnaces, which did exactly this, and which is still currently up and running, being updated for Forge and Neoforge, and which you might have heard about. The Replay mod is another mod that I've gatekept until these last few entries, as I've used it in most of them. It lets you record everything happening in game and then revisit it from a third person, acting as a spectator to your own multiplayer or single player game, with options to adjust speed, camera, and even creating keyframes to create automatic camera shots and things like that. This mod gets a whole lot deeper than what I'm showing. Every update has added more camera tools and more options, and it's actually still actively maintained today, both for Forge and Fabric. This mod is legendary, and a lot of YouTubers you have watched probably used it for years. There really isn't much else to note without making a full tutorial. Killer PAC-MAN was a mod actually developed by Fisk's Fillet, the one for the Mob Fusion mods and Fisk's Superheroes. And, well, this mod is weird. It literally only adds a single mob, PAC-MAN. Except he has some big teeth and is constantly spitting saliva, and it will just go after you no matter what. And that's the entire mod. PAC-MAN also spawns just like a zombie if everything is dark enough, and yeah, I'd love to say something else, but it really was just this. As far as I know, this mod was commissioned by a YouTuber for something, but eventually everyone just grabbed it and there were a ton of videos on this mod, so it did somehow become memorable. This and the next entry are all related to number 7, and even though they are also the newest mods on the list, I think they're important to explain the aftermath of Pixelmon's termination. This entry is 85 for Pixelmon Reforged. It picked up basically immediately as a whole successor, directly built on the source code, and according to an official post on Pixelmon's current forum, it had most of the old Pixelmon developers and staff. And even though there are no sources about specific people, it's clear why that is the case, considering why the mod originally even halted development. Pixelmon Reforged as a mod has now moved into Neoforge and current versions, and it has received pretty much every new mechanic from the mainline Pokemon games through the years, including Dynamax, Mega Evolutions, and literally the entire Pokédex. They have implemented Pokemon for the next region as an Easter egg at the time of recording, even if we don't even know their stats or evolutions yet, so they really have caught up actively updating the mod. The other side of the coin, Pixelmon Generations, was quite different. It didn't have the original developers, and simply grabbed the source code from the original Pixelmon and plastered everything with models brought directly from the 3DS Pokemon games, even with most of the animations being just brought over or at least modified. While this sounds cheap in comparison to Reforged at the time, which was actually making new models for everything, it was a bit how current Cobblemon mods can get extremely popular because sometimes they add a lot of Pokemon that actual Cobblemon hasn't added yet, with the catch that they don't often have the same amount of quality or animations. It's kind of a thing of quantity over quality. By when Pixelmon was shut down in 2017, despite being as old as it was, it actually barely had the Gen 6 or Kalos starters, and its Pokédex just being implemented, which is where Pixelmon Generations found the weak spot, precisely in being able to add every other Pokemon so quickly simply by ripping all the models directly from the games and setting their stats. This made it so the players and servers were actually pretty split between the Reforged and Generations versions. Some of us were already accustomed to Pixelmon's old identity and developers, whereas other people just wanted every Pokemon to be in the game, which honestly Generations did deliver. A lot of the old Pixelmon jank is still here, including the excruciating lag problem the original Pixelmon already faced, and which I doubt using high poly models from the Nintendo Switch games ever helped. And it also just had a shitload of new blocks, decorative stuff from the games which Even if it's just ripped models, I do appreciate it, especially stupid things like those polka dolls from the secret bases in Alpha Sapphire. No offense to the developers, because clearly there was some level of love put into this, but even the new music, which I'd typically appreciate, does not sound the best. I'm sorry, but like, come on. Officially, Pixelmon Generations never walked past Forge 1.12. Even with 6 years of full development on its back. There is something different which is actually noteworthy and I wanted to include in this video. There is a mod simply called Generations up on CourseForge right now, or Modrinth, claiming to be the same team from Pixelmon Generations. And lo and behold, it's the exact same thing as Pixelmon Generations. It's literally a Cobblemon add-in which enhances your experience by replacing blocky models with, yeah, it's basically the same thing, but they've now moved it onto Cobblemon. And in fact, they literally just implemented everything from the Pixelmon version, as everything is in-game. Like, I am not kidding, the content which hasn't been properly worked on or can't be, like the NPC stuff, which Cobblemon at the time of recording doesn't have, is literally there, but labeled as unimplemented. Quark is and was a 1.9 and beyond mod that works as a collection of smaller mods. Basically, it's not client-side, at least it's not intended to be, but you might not notice anything instantly either. It adds small details like better caves, inventory sorting, more variation for textures or mobs, enhanced HUD elements that tell you either your enchantments or total amounts without having to open the full inventory, and if it does add an actual feature, it's something small like the Pekarang. Or the few mobs it adds, it really doesn't overstay its welcome. It is an essential mod because of the quality of life improvements in something like 1.12, but everything is really small. There are variations for chests, trapdoors before they were officially added, colored slimes, glass and invisible item frames as well, candles before they were also added to the main game, paper walls very similar to the ones in Chisel, and so much more. And actually, it does sound like a lot. But in actual gameplay, especially in these older versions, you'll find little core content, which is honestly quite good, because that means it typically can just work well with every other mod, and that's the reason it's as beloved as it actually is. The official mod description itself couldn't really be more accurate. It's a collection of small things that improve the vanilla Minecraft experience, and that is pretty much it. This is not enough items, or nay, created by Chicken Bones. This was easily one of the top 3 universal mods of this era, and ended up in pretty much every mod pack. It adds the buttons and side menu in the inventory you've also been seeing through the video, like I said. You can search for items, inspect their uses, view their recipes, and all of this through menus, inside of more menus. So you can pretty much figure out how to obtain everything just by pressing the recipe or the use key on everything. Recipes also don't get limited to just the crafting table, as they can also include modded blocks, furnaces, and thus everything else. This mod was almost a necessity at one point, since Minecraft's own recipe book wasn't added until 1.12 in June of 2017. Before that, you either knew recipes by heart or you had to look them up online. This also introduced a cheat mode, which was a huge plus because before the modern item names we have today, everything was just identified by numeric IDs, stone being 1, grass being 2, and something like a diamond sword being 276. So memorizing all of that was pretty much a nightmare. As development slowed down, another mod called Just Enough Items, or J, was released by Mess in 2015 as a direct successor, to the point where Chicken Bones, the creator himself, simply redirected people to it instead. By Minecraft 1.12, despite having received a few more updates, not enough items had pretty much come to an end, while J is still actively maintained by Mess today. And as a fun fact, Chicken Bones, the developer behind the original Not Enough Items, was actually hired by Relogic, the studio behind Terraria, in 2022. He had already been involved with Terraria's mod loader for quite some time, so in a way he simply moved from one sandbox game to another, so props to him as well. Another extremely old mod, this time by Nopes, who we have already seen through more player models and animal bikes, I just forgot to say his actual name, is custom NPCs. As the name implies, this mod added a ton of blocks and tools to create your own custom NPCs. Pretty much, or at least as far as I'm aware, absolutely nothing from this mod is actually obtainable in survival, which might be a reason you could perhaps have never heard of it. Instead, this was a mod mostly just used in adventure maps or by content creators like YouTubers. I can certainly name a few who used it constantly on YouTube, whether it was for the furniture, the classic blood decals, the NPCs themselves, or the ridiculous amount of items added. The mod also came with an absurd amount of weapons. Sure, none of them were craftable, but they were still really fun to mess around, especially things like the shuriken. This is a very great mod, and honestly it's a shame it never made it past 1.16.5. There is, however, a recent backport to 1.7.10 alongside a Fabric and Neoforge continuation called Custom NPCs Unofficial, which actually, despite being unofficial, has permission from the original creator and is still being updated monthly. Bibliocraft is a mod that adds a ton of mostly wood-related blocks, typically related to storage, and a few new lamps. Bibliocraft started as a mod to place all the different books from really modded worlds, which just gave you a ton of whatever PDFs and all whatnot, and it was built around that idea. But there are also now things to store armor, blocks, and basically everything at this point, but you get the idea. It's a furniture mod centered around storage. In fact, apparently this mod started as a single bookshelf block. I'm not kidding. The mod was last officially updated for 1.12, but the creator, Nushas, actually released the source code, as he said he just ran out of free time to keep updating it. Not that he abandoned it out of disinterest in Minecraft modding or something. This is a nice mod, honestly. It doesn't precisely look as good as Mr. Crayfish's furniture or something, but not like it matters because this mod strives for a more practical objective. This is going to be a bit hard to showcase because I don't have much to say, but there's a lot to see, so I'm just going to really speed up the footage. Instant Massive Structures literally only introduces instant and massive structures you can spawn with craftable blocks sometimes, or simply with creative locked blocks. These are basically just like summoning a world edit schematic, except that it is excruciatingly slow. This footage is pretty sped up, but something like the football stadium took a very long time. This mod is meant to cover two necessities, we could say. The first, meant to provide a cheap and easy way to spawn builds for survival players who don't really want to be concerned with building, or just don't care. And second, just generally add a ton of structures for creative, whether you want to create cities quickly or whatever. In essence, this is literally just a collection of like 700 world edit schematics, all mashed together. But yeah, you get the point, there's not much to say about this one. Roguelike Dungeons was and still is my favorite Minecraft dungeon mod. It adds structures like this little house to signal them from the outside. And though you could use them as a new home, sure, they themselves are the home and the first layer of an expanding dungeon that lies beneath. The dungeons, though randomly generated, mostly all look the same and follow the same structure. Each layer gets more challenging, less fair, and with more loot. It's as simple as that. This is a very great mod for survival. It adds no actual new items or blocks, It really just uses vanilla enchantments and naming conventions to have some wacky custom weapons or armors, so it doesn't even take away from any other mod. I have to admit it though, the final layer, especially on old versions like 1.7, although it might be a skill issue on my side, do definitely get much more difficult. Sometimes even kind of unfair, but it's always worth it because that's where the good loot usually is. That's it. It's a good challenge and the loot isn't either too bad or too good, hitting that sweet spot many of us loved and still do. While most of the documentation, like I said, was gone, what's true is that after Minecraft 1.4 or so, Sans minimap, the one we looked at before, stopped development for whatever causes, probably something about disinterest like every other mod author we've seen today. And here is where the developer Mamiya Otaru contacted San and was given permission to continue development, which was eventually renamed to Voxel Map. Why was it renamed? I mean, I guess it did make sense considering San was far gone by the point this was renamed. Well, Voxel Map wasn't just Sans minimap re-uploaded and made compatible with newer versions from the time. It also added things like lighting based on terrain height, the option to use the previous lighting system either way, and a supposedly improved radar. It also now supports texture packs, and for some reason, this is very weird, the waypoints I created in entry number 51 in beta 1.7.3 with the original Sans were loaded in this brand new world I created, which didn't have a name. This is even stranger considering the beta client was in a totally different directory, and for a second I thought this was because of Rays, but no, it was actually Sans which was loading. To this day I have no idea where San is storing all of his crap in my computer. That's really it, though. It was just another Sans. It has better GUI and the features I commented. Also, the full screen map has been moved to a key rather than being part of the Zoom, which is very appreciated. Voxel Map, surprisingly, is still officially maintained, though it is a tad bit different. The last version at the time of recording is for Fabric or Forge 1.21.1. Localized Weather Stormfronts is a surprisingly very old mod that adds things like wind and very few blocks related to them. It improves Minecraft's general weather aesthetics and also adds destructive and configurable things like tornadoes, cyclones, and generally just realistic clouds and weather that are procedural based on these phenomena. The tornadoes in particular, not all of them because there are different intensities, but they can actually get extremely destructive with your world. Cyano's Wonderful Wands was a simple mod that added 12 magic wands that were all craftable in survival. The one of teleportation works as an ender pearl. The mining one is almost like a maximum haste pickaxe, and this is the one that's probably the most broken. The wand of freezing is literally Frostwalker before Frostwalker, because I don't really see any other practical use for it. The Wand of Light is underwhelming. I didn't even know what this was, but I guess it's supposed to be a block that emits light and all, but The Wand of Healing, would you take a guess? The harvesting one is just meant to like break crops and stuff at once. And this other one is just bone meal. Then there's the Wand of Magic Missiles, which just spams projectiles. This shoddy looking thunder one. This one, which though it's called storms, does not spawn a storm and just makes lightning bolts. And finally the Wands of Fire and Death, which both just throw wither skulls and cast fireballs. These are by far the coolest two ones. Chococraft adds chocobos from Final Fantasy as a wild mob you can encounter and tame in Minecraft. They can be quite hard to tame and will require these new plants the mod adds all throughout the world. Once tamed, you can craft a custom saddle and ride them just like a horse. While they cannot jump 2 blocks high like a horse, they can't die of fall damage, and in fact they actually can swim, aside from the fact that they are faster than most horses. The mod also adds bags you can put on them through shift and right click and access a chest. This mod, though discontinued by its original author, actually received continuations all throughout the years and is somehow still maintained. Somewhere in 2012 or 2013, Journey Map was created. It wanted to oppose the previously seen race or voxel map mods, which simply drew a top-down perspective of whatever was above or next to you, and instead it wanted to create a persistent, real map that actually stayed. It didn't want to be a minimap, but as the name implies, it wanted to create a massive actual map for your journey. I don't really know exactly when does Journey Map start, but you are seeing the earliest 1.7 version on CurseForge. It probably started around Minecraft 1.4 or even before, but I'd rather not just make assumptions. While it wasn't necessarily the best standalone minimap, it was actually the first live world mapping tool like this, which also included a minimap. Journey Map borrowed the standard conventions already established by minimaps and made something different, and it shows. Because though Voxel Map, for example, is still being updated, it has in fact mostly been forgotten, as it has 13 million downloads, whereas Journey Map, still maintained, has a whopping 340 million downloads on the same site. In case you also wonder, no, Seiro's minimap isn't as old as any of these. The earliest release I could find dates back to March of 2015, at least like 3 or 4 years behind the competition. Still, it cemented a final blow on mods like the aforementioned Voxel Map, as it's sitting right behind Journey Map at 230 million downloads in CurseForge, also having a separate full screen map add-in which acts more like Journey Map with almost exactly 200 million as well. The original mod, called the GraveStone Mod, was pretty simple. When you died, instead of dropping everything, all of your items would disappear and a tombstone would appear right where you died, labeled with your username. And when you broke said tombstone, all of your items would be given back. That's literally it. This simple mod was included in hundreds and hundreds of modded playthroughs and servers, and many mods like it have also existed ever since. It also gives you a little paper with information about when you last died, so you can find your grave without needing any other external mod. Chocolate Quest, or sometimes just known as Better Dungeons in the past, is a mod that simply sprinkles your worlds with a lot of structures. A lot. They are all dungeons, not dungeons in the style of roguelike, but instead something more akin to a prison, a conquered village, or something like a castle or a ship. It doesn't take itself too seriously, it's simply a light-hearted dungeon mod with a ton of content, sometimes maybe even too much. All of these structures have a lot of mobs and worthy enough loot, and typically either half custom or entirely custom mobs like pirates. Half custom, I mean sometimes they really are just zombies with stuff, but come on, it's a very old mod and it's fine enough. Chocolate Quest is actually extremely fun to play with in survival, at least for me. There is a 1.12 version called Chocolate Quest Report, which despite being only for one version has a whopping 6 million downloads, and I haven't tried the revival, but as far as the original mod goes, trust me, this is an incredibly worthy mod, and you will definitely have a fun time exploring these dungeons, even in today's day, with the only downside being that it has to be on an old version like 1.7. Iron Chests was a mod that added chests for every metallic element in Minecraft, and also dirt. The thing is that each one of them has its own properties. I mean, all of them slowly get bigger, but for example, the diamond, crystal and obsidian ones are all different between each other, despite having the exact same slots. The diamond one doesn't have anything special. The crystal one shows a preview of the items inside, not all of them, because that would be a nightmare for lag, and the obsidian one is blast resistant. There is also a dirt chest, like I said, and it comes with a manual. You cannot stack these chests together to create a double chest, but you can in fact just place them together. So that's great, because in these older versions you couldn't even place chests within one block of each other. So at least this is a way to circumvent that and save some space.